Welcome to Stella in a Yoga School, another live discussion with Stella and Jessi.
Hello, sweet souls. Today we are talking about the yamas, specifically the first code of observances in yoga, which is called ahimsa or nonviolence. And
How to be kind.
how to be kind, right? How to be kind to ourselves, how to be kind to ourselves, to other people, how to operate in this world when it always feels like there's so much to be frustrated about, to complain about, to get angry about.
Yeah, I think Ahimsa is really an acknowledgement that there's power in our thoughts, in our words, our actions, and to come from a place that is not hostile, to come from a place that is kind. It's like being gentle and fearless in this intention to be kind.
Right. And that comes with a lot of trust,
Mm.
right? It comes with a lot of trust that we're in the right place at the right time, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that we don't need to have like fear or regret or some sort of like harboring some sort of resentment towards people, places, or things that have happened to us, right? I know that like we can go back into our lives and be like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, or this hadn't happened to me. But when we apply the like, how is this happening for me? And what can I do? Or how can I learn from this? That is an awesome way to practice ahimsa, right? Because it gets really easy to be like, oh, shucks, wish that hadn't happened, or I wouldn't have done that or said that. So that's like the easiest or one of the ways to apply ahimsa and how to not be harmful to yourself. I think it really starts with ourselves, right? And then that's how we get it out to other people. Because if we're feeling angry or resentful towards someone else, generally it's because we also have that inside of our own hearts about ourselves.
Hmm.
Right.
I know for me, when I first learned about Ahimsa, I had to really look at the way I was judging, like the amount of like inner dialogue that I had that was centered around judgments. And it was first, I was super judgmental about myself. And so I had to identify when that thought pattern would come up. And I'm like, oh, Jessi, judgment, that's judgment. And then how much I judged, and then I also judged everybody else, like nitpicking and, oh, you should do this and you should. And I had to just, one of my constant ahimsa practices, and I've gotten better over time, is noticing like, is that thought judgment? Yep, that's judgment. Okay, let that go. Let that go. That's just judgment. That's just judgment. And it just helps me that's like kind of like my personal ahimsa practice. Because I notice when the judgment thoughts come up, that's not me being kind. And so it's just this constant, I have to constantly catch myself.
Yeah, true compassion, right? True compassion and just respect for what is. And that judgment's a big one, right? Like it's not about, and the thing is that it's not about like not making rational judgment for what is safe or for what is not safe for you. That's a little bit something different, because just because you're being a kind person or you're being nice in the world, it doesn't mean that you're a doormat, right? It doesn't mean that you let things slide or that you don't have boundaries. In fact, having boundaries is one of the best things you can do to actually create more room for more empathy in your life. When I learned that, that was a big one for me. I was like, whoa, like when I have boundaries and I say no to certain things or people, it's actually giving me more room to have more love and more compassion for and more presence in my life, right? It gives you so much more room for presence when you're, instead of like people pleasing, when you can cut some of that stuff out, like then it's it's practicing ahimsa for yourself, but it's also practicing ahimsa for someone else, because then you can actually be truly present with what you're doing. There are so many layers to this one subject, right? Or to this one yama, this code of observation for our lives.
Yeah. It's a big one. Make compassion your mission.
And I had a teacher one time who was like, I'm going to practice ahimsa and I'm going to fast until I feel like I'm not doing that, right? So cutting out like the negative self-talk or the judgment for somebody else, or like, oh, that should be like this, or this should be like that. I should have done this, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, and then I got really hungry. Like it just took too long. So over a course of time, I had to like stop myself and say, okay, well, I'm going to actually eat, because then it was actually a practice of, or the opposite practice of ahimsa, because she was starving. Right? So again, like, where do we have that boundary? But I think that's from Brene Brown, actually, where I learned that, or where that piece like really stuck in for me. It was about like the creating boundaries and how that creates more room for empathy and compassion for others and yourself. So where else do we practice ahimsa in our lives?
Some people like do things like, because it's practicing kindness, compassion for all living things. So another practice is maybe not eating meat. Like that could be a way that someone practices ahimsa, not eating animals because of their practice of being kind and not wanting to eat the animals. Like that might be somebody's practice. Uh, like, where else can we find kindness? I always find also too, one of the ways that me personally I've started to add in is like when I just like making sure that I give to homeless or give to needy, like making it a conscious practice of mine of, giving donations or, giving food or whatever that is like on a pretty regular basis. I wanted to make sure for me as an ahimsa practice is okay, there's a lot of people out there that need help. And as part of my ahimsa practice is making that conscious effort of donating my time or donating my money or donating food to people that need it. Um, that's another way that I like just that's ahimsa for me. It's like, hey, get out there and do something for these. Instead of sitting here worrying about it, which I tend to do, I just sit here and like, oh, all these people are starving. The world is blah. And I'm like, well, Jesse, do something about it. And so focusing on what I can do, which is I can, gift my time or gift, so another ahimsa practice.
Yeah, it is about focusing on what we can do, right? And worrying is not contributing to loving kindness, right? Worrying is not contributing to it. In fact, all worrying does is create more worry or create more fear. So I believe that our job in life really is to like stay in our heart, to stay heart centered. And when we're doing that, that's how we can contribute to making the world a more peaceful place by being peaceful with ourselves. That's a practice of ahimsa. I feel like we could go on and on about
yeah,
it.
we could.
We
We're
go
trying to make
on
this
and
one
on
short,
about
Stella.
about how to be kind to yourself, to others, to all the things. One of the other things that I do is that when I do feel like I want to complain about something, right? Because I do like to verbally vocalize what's happening in my life. I'm a verbal processor, right? Is I started practicing giving myself a limited amount of time or times to talk about something. So using them like, maybe I can only talk about that thing 3 times, like this happened, blah, 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 blah. And then catch myself again, and then explaining it maybe one more time, and then allowing that to be complete so that I wasn't continuing to vocally vomit it out and or to continue like that cycle of fear or worry or resentment or whatever was building up in there, right? So then I could like close that container that I got to get it out. I got to share it, say it, talk about it, and then I could let it be done. And that is a really sweet practice for me in my life of how to practice ahimsa.
I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot going on, right? And a lot of us like to talk about it. Some of us are really good talkers. So how do I manage, right? How do I manage that part?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, what we're here for in Stella Luna's school and certification program is here to release fears
Through fun, functional movement.
and spirituality.
So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We are going to continue our talk. We're going to go through all the yamas. So we'll go on to the next one next time. But for today, be kind.
Blessings.